From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
We received about 34 cases from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. Most of them were seriously injured. More than 20 cases. They were sent to the surgery room right away. The number of deaths were 4. They were dead already when they arrived at the hospital.
Clashes continue across Yemen as President Ali Abdullah Saleh's refusal to step down continues. Dozens have been killed since Monday. We'll go to the capital of Sana'a for the latest. Then Al Jazeera correspondent Dorothy Parvaz disappeared for 19 days after she flew into Syria to cover the uprising at the end of April.
I was in the Syrian detention center for three days, 2 nights. And what I heard were just savage beatings. I was handcuffed repeatedly, blindfolded, taken to a courtyard, left to hear these men being beaten. They all sounded very young. They sounded to be in their late teens, early 20s. So it was an overall a terrifying experience.
Dorothy Parvaz was jailed in a Syrian prison. Then, after 16 days, she was released. She was deported to Iran for most of that time. We'll speak with Parvaz about her ordeal and the human rights crisis that continues to unfold in Syria. Finally, a prominent Wall Street analyst predicts not a single top executive at Goldman Sachs will face criminal prosecution for the company's role in causing the financial meltdown of 2008. We'll speak with Pulitzer Prize-winning New York Times reporter Gretchen Morgenson, as well as whistleblower Joshua Rosner. Their book is called Reckless Endangerment: How Outsized Ambition, Greed, and Corruption Led to Economic Armageddon. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Clashes are continuing across Yemen and the growing conflict over President Ali Abdullah Saleh's refusal to step down. At least 15 people were reportedly killed in overnight clashes in the capital Sana'a. Dozens have been killed since Monday when artillery explosions and machine gun fire shattered a tenuous ceasefire that lasted less than 48 hours. We'll have more on Yemen after headlines. The oil minister for Muammar Gaddafi's Libyan government has defected, citing the, quote, daily spilling of blood. Speaking in Italy, Shokri Ghanem expressed support for the Libyan rebels opposing Gaddafi, but declined to say whether he would join their movement.
With this situation, which is unbearable, one cannot continue working, and therefore I left the country, and I decided also to leave my job and to join the choice of the Libyan youth to create a modern constitutional state respecting human rights and building for a better future for all Libyans.
In other Libya news, House Republicans have postponed a vote on a measure to end the U.S. role in the bombing over fears the resolution would pass. The proposal from Democratic Congress member Dennis Kucinich of Ohio cites the Obama administration's apparent violation of the 1973 War Powers Act, which requires congressional approval for military action after 60 days. In a statement, Kucinich said, quote, I am disappointed the president and leadership feel the need to buy even more time to shore up support for the war in Libya. It's not surprising that some are now wondering if a preliminary vote count came out in favor of defending the Constitution, he said. The Obama administration's downplaying the latest plea from Afghan President Hamid Karzai for NATO to stop attacking Afghan homes. Karzai criticized the U.S.-led NATO force after 12 children and 2 women were killed in a bombing on Sunday. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said only that the U.S. will continue to do everything it can to express regret.
We're going to continue to do everything we can to express our deep regret when a terrible incident occurs and civilians are injured or killed. And I would only underscore that that stands in stark contrast to the indiscriminate killing, the suicide bombing, the IED, the improvised explosive devices that are used by the insurgents without regard for any human life.
Dozens have been killed in Pakistan after some 200 Afghan militants crossed the border and attacked a military checkpoint. At least 27 troops and 35 militants died in the day-long battle. The violence came just one day after a top Pakistani general announced plans to stage a sweeping military operation against insurgents in the region. In Bahrain, government forces have attacked protesters just hours after lifting a near 3-month martial law. Human rights activists say rubber bullets, stun grenades, shotguns and tear gas were used in the crackdown on protesters in 20 villages. In the capital, Manama, large groups of police officers descended on locations where demonstrators had called for protests. The Obama administration has been largely silent on the Bahraini government's efforts to crush the protest movement. Bahrain is a key U.S. ally and home to the Navy's Fifth Fleet. An Egyptian court has announced ousted President Hosni Mubarak will stand trial in early August on charges of corruption and the killing of protesters. Mubarak's sons will be tried on charges of corruption at the same time. The case marks the first time in modern history that an Arab leader has been toppled and tried by his own people. The Obama administration's announced it will again sit out a UN conference on racism following its initial boycott of 2009. The UN is hosting the World Conference Against Racism in September to mark the 10 years since the process that began in Durban, South Africa in 2001. Bush administration diplomats walked out of the Durban conference after delegates proposed a resolution likening Zionism to racism. New York State has filed a lawsuit alleging federal regulators failed to conduct a complete environmental impact study before authorizing the controversial natural gas drilling technique known as hydraulic fracturing, or fracking. Hydraulic fracturing has been linked to contaminating water supplies through the release of methane gas and other chemicals. New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman is demanding a new environmental impact study before any fracking is carried out. New York State has also suspended involvement in the controversial federal immigration enforcement policy that requires local police to forward fingerprints of every person they arrest to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. The program, called Secure Communities, allows federal immigration officials to pursue deportation against those found to be undocumented or non-citizen with a criminal record. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says state officials will investigate the program to determine whether it's undermined law enforcement and harmed immigrant communities, as critics have alleged. New York's the second state to opt out after Illinois became the first last month. In Arizona, activists have submitted an official petition for the recall of Republican State Senate President Russell Pierce, best known for sponsoring the state's notorious anti-immigrant law. Pierce's opponents have collected over 18,300 signatures, more than double the required amount. Florida Governor Rick Scott has signed into law a measure that requires prospective welfare recipients to pay for and undergo drug testing. Applicants who test positive for drug use will be barred from receiving government assistance for 1 year or until they complete a drug abuse program. Those who pass the test will be reimbursed for the cost. In a statement, the American Civil Liberties Union of Florida said, quote, "This law subjects Floridians who are impacted by the economic downturn to a humiliating search of their urine and body fluids without cause or even suspicion of drug abuse." Palestinians have marked the 1-year anniversary of the Israeli attack on a Gaza-bound aid flotilla that killed 9 people and left dozens wounded. In Gaza, Palestinian residents boarded boats and carried the Palestinian and Turkish flags in honor of the Turkish ship raided by Israeli commandos. Palestinian solidarity activists are preparing a new flotilla sailing to Gaza for later this month. A new report from the International Atomic Energy Agency finds Japan underestimated the danger of tsunamis and failed to adequately prepare backup systems at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant. The IAEA echoed a widely held criticism that collusion between the nuclear industry and regulators resulted in a lack of oversight and inadequate safety levels at the now-stricken plant. The report comes as Japanese Prime Minister Naoto Kan has survived a no-confidence vote in the Japanese parliament. Honduras has been readmitted to the Organization of American States nearly 2 years after its suspension in the wake of the ouster of then-President Manuel Zelaya. Ecuador was the lone nation to vote against the decision, citing continued human rights violations and impunity. Zelaya's return to Honduras over the weekend had long been a key condition for readmission. You can go to our website at democracynow.org for our exclusive coverage of President Zelaya's return home from Managua, Nicaragua by plane, and then what happened over the next few days. And 7 tornadoes touched down in Massachusetts Wednesday, leaving at least 4 people dead and destroying multiple buildings. The tornado outbreak was the worst the state has seen since 1953, leaving an estimated 50,000 residents without power. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Mimi Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.